On this episode of the John 1911 podcast, Larry Vickers, Lucas Botkin, Sig Silences, and the Mac 50. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. This is episode 373 of the John 1911 podcast. Today is Wednesday, June 14th at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The clock just rolled, and I like to stay accurate, so accuracy is a big thing. So this is going to be a solo episode. Going to just run down a couple things going on around here, and we'll get the boys for a group episode. That sounds kind of weird. No P. Diddy jokes. Get the boys together for, a regular episode, maybe tomorrow or the next day. But I guess the first thing is to mention is I posted the video of the Remington 81 rifle on our social media, on our website. And, it's a neat gun. We've wanted one for a while. I referenced it, I think, on the last podcast. And, I finally got the video up. And somebody, I'm not going to say her name, SV, I don't know if you want me to, but he had recommended looking into Griffin and Howe, or I think it's Stith, to see if because there's it's drill and tap for a scope base, which is unusual, and to see if that pattern matches any of Griffin and Howe, or older companies' scope bases, and maybe I could find something if I did ever want to put a scope on that rifle and turn it into like a Remington 81 sniper. So, and again, I know it's a joke, it's not a sniper, but a sporterized sniper. It'd be a sniper if it wasn't sporterized. So anyway, I thought that was pretty neat. Haven't had a chance to fire that gun yet. Been lots going on, but we're still going through the to-do list with all the projects we're going through in the armory. That's why you've seen a bunch of those. There's still some more to come, but that's kind of where we at with that, with that project. And as I referred to on the last episode, probably the most expensive Brownell's BRN10 rifle that's ever transacted has arrived, and it's actually in my truck right now. And I got to get it in the armory and get it all logged in and everything. But I think it's unfired. If it isn't unfired, it's practically unfired. So that makes me feel good. It doesn't have any box or papers. Not that, I care. We need any of that. But it's nice to have one. It's a neat looking gun because I think it's a copy of the original, was it the Portuguese AR-10? And um, I'm not a big fan of the AR-10. I've never had a lot. Any AR-10, modern AR-10 I've ever really interfaced with, except one, has ever impressed me or even really functioned well. And I think a lot of that can be attributed to, everybody today has to mess with their guns, and they have to just make them super complicated, and they have to trick them out and just make everything adjustable and do all this crap. And, I've just avoided them. Which I think is a glaring hole in our reference collection. I'm surprised no one's ever noticed it. Like all the various, all Knights, H&K, all these AR-10s, the SASS 110, like all these guns, not happy with them. So, but this gun, it should be a reproduction kinda of how the AR-10 is supposed to be, as light as it can be, and without a bunch of crap on it. For the 308 is a pretty high powered round. So we have it. It's cool. You'll see video on it. Probably not anytime soon. There's too much other stuff going on, especially with trying to get the construction done and getting the range open and the other shooting schedules. But it's come in. I will say this, and it's a learning curve right off the bat. And I don't know if Brownells did this as, look, Brownells had some problems, had some decisions to make when they repopped this gun. Okay. Would they do it exactly like the original, or are there some things they should do maybe that are just a little bit better? Because you have to take in mind the experience of the end user. They kind of lean towards the experience of the end user. Number one, because it's probably more, these changes might be more reliable. Two, they might be less expensive, and three, they might be more enjoyable for the actual customer. So, like for example, I guess it uses SR25 mags. I don't really, again, because I don't pay attention to AR-10s. I don't know the difference between all these different 308 caliber magazines. So I don't know. So, but apparently this AR-10 doesn't use real AR-10 magazines. It uses the same mags that all these modern 308 ARs use. So, that's probably a good thing. And the other thing is that I think is it's interesting is if you know anything about the AR-15, you will know that that carry handle, serves as a sight plane for the iron sights, but also underneath that carry handle is where the original charging handle for the AR-10 is located. Kind of like, I mean, it's not an analog, but it's not dissimilar than maybe the approach that the G36 took, or maybe the FAMAS took. Stoner really had come up with that, where he put, again, I'm not saying he's the first one, but he put that charging handle on top of the rifle and then put the sights over it. Well, subsequent AR-15s, they moved it to the rear of the gun, and that's where the T charging handle comes from. So, what was interesting is to get this gun to unlock, uh, and I'm not a small guy and I'm not a weak guy, but I guess maybe I don't have maybe I don't have the toughest Popeye hands, but getting this gun to unlock, because they had to put an extra, either more powerful or extra D10 in it, because I guess the original AR-10s, when you fired them, because again it's a 308, that charging handle structure would come loose and float around while you're shooting the gun. To get this to unlock under that charging handle, for me, I kind of have to mortar it on my thigh. It kind of sucks. I'm hoping it breaks in a little bit. I mean, I guess if it doesn't break in, it's not that big of a deal. It's never going to be a quote working gun. Like, we're not going to be shooting it for time or qualifications or whatever. But it's one of those things where you see it on the internet, you see it in the books, you have opinions, you think everybody talks. Then you get a hold of something and you're like, man, this kind of sucks rocks a little bit. This isn't as cool as what I was thinking. Or, maybe they made a change for a reason. And one of the reasons would be you can get more leverage and have more options, uh, to charge the gun with the T charging handle at the behind that charging hand behind the sight, the carry handle in air quotes, you can't see my fingers. You get more options back there. You start to really see immediately. Yeah, I can see why they changed that. So yeah, it'll be a fun gun once when we get around to shooting it. We actually have to probably dig up some 308 ammo. All the 308 ammo we've got is like all match ammo for sniper rifles. I bet we've got less than 1,000 rounds, maybe less than 500 rounds of like machine gun ball, 147, 150 grain 308 ammo. So I'll probably have to call AIM Surplus or somebody and dig up some ammo before we can really shoot that gun. Range construction updates. I'm actually going to be responding to someone that sent a text message to me earlier today about getting onto the range and the schedule. We've started construction. You you guys have been hearing about construction now for 2 years, and it's like, I'm tired of hearing about construction. Well, now I'm doing some updates to the actual range, not the range building infrastructure, but the actual range. And we started doing some of that. It has just rained and rained and rained. I'm looking at a puddle now, actually out the window. So that puddle is a third of what it was a couple days ago. And you'd be like, great, maybe things will be dry. Well, it's going to start raining tomorrow night. So we can't even, and it's going to rain for the most 7 of the next 10 days. And it's like, I'm not even going to bring the bulldozer in to sit here, and I got to pay for it. If it's just going to be wet because it can't do anything with it. So yeah, that's where we are with with some of that range, dirt work. But one thing I've decided to do is, and this popped up unexpectedly, and I guess it shouldn't have, is over the winter, well, when Kraken came through, I set up a steel target on a hill that is exactly 100 yards from the coyote door. So we could be up there in the the coyote door, the second story of the barn that we can hunt out of and shoot out of, and all kinds of weather. And I wanted a 100-yard target because just like checking zero or zero or fine tuning zero, it's just like, oh shit, I need a 100-yard target up there. So threw up a 100-yard target. Well, down in the pit and even on the rifle range, that 100-yard target for the coyote door just turns into some random distance target that isn't just something to shoot at. Well, I've realized that's kind of come in pretty handy, and I need to start adding more, I would say, like goofy targets. Just I've got a couple more humanoid pieces of steel, and I can just randomly throw them out there. And so for example, like if I want to shoot the AR-10 from the pit, I don't necessarily want to shoot it at 600 yards. It's not a match rifle. It's probably not going to group for shit at 600 yards. I mean, it may not even land on a humanoid target at 600 yards. But from the pit, shooting steel, just getting some reps with it, random 47-yard target and a 62-yard target, maybe an 89-yard target, and just kind of having some stuff to just kind of get used to the drop and the recoil and transitions. Why not? I've got the steel, might as well put them out there. We have plenty of room on the property. It's not like we can't get the tractor around to cut the stuff. So you're gonna see some stuff like that as well on the range, and it'll make for more interesting content moving forward. In Milsurp news, I actually wanted to mention this last week, and the last I checked earlier this morning, they still had them. It's kind of a surprise, and actually it's a good price. It's cheaper than what we paid for it. AIM Surplus has acquired uh, French service pistols. You'd call them the Mac 50 or the Moss 50, depending on, I don't know what the actual French military designation is, but Mac and Moss are the you know, manufacturer de Saint Etienne. I don't know what Mac is. The ghost of Ian McCollum is going to show up and smack me in the face. Shatter, shatter. I can't say it. I feel like I'm gonna have a stroke. So whatever Mac is, sometimes you see him with MAS 50, sometimes you see him with MAC 50. It's the same freaking gun. And until this year or late last year, these guns were crazy rare in the United States. Crazy rare. Like so few. The last group I think had been brought in might have been in the 60s. And I mean, at one point, I think they'd gotten up into multiple thousands of dollars. We picked one up from the importer, which is Navy Arms, or what are they also called? Navy Arms and Old Western Scrounger in West Virginia, my old home. And they import, they did the French sniper rifles. They have brought in a bunch of these Mac Moss 50s. And so I guess they've kind of had their run. They've sold enough of them. So now they've sold some to AIM Surplus. That's obviously where they came from. I haven't seen them, but I'm sure that's what the import mark's going to be on them. They're like $1,099, basically $1,000. And I don't know if they're limiting the magazines. We were able to get some extra magazines, but the magazines were typically limited with these guns as well. But if you're interested in these guns, we have a video on it. I'll post in the comments section a link to our video that I did. I shot the gun. I don't know if I shot it on timer, but I definitely shot it, on a plate rack and transitioning with it and working it, working the safety. And it's not an unusable gun at all. It's surprisingly good. I mean, is it really as usable as like the modern Glock or the modern 1911? No, but I'm telling you, it's not. I make that gun work. I could absolutely make the gun work. And the way that safety works in that gun, I could carry it cocked and locked too, which is a surprise if you just open your mind to how to work the safety. But I say if you're in the market or you think you're in a market, get some, because when they are gone, they're going to go back up. Are they going to go back up to $3,000? No, but you're not going to see these guns for $1,000. I can't believe I'm seeing them with a 1 0 in front of them at all at Aim Surplus. And no, Aim Surplus doesn't know us from Adam. Um, you know, figured I'd pass it on. Snooze, you lose on this one, buddy. Let me tell you. Mac 50, Aim Surplus, or Old Western Scrounger. Maybe check Old Western Scrounger, Navy Arms, to see what their prices are now. Maybe they've dropped their prices too. So maybe you might be able to get some accessories and stuff with it as well. So definitely check them out. Highly recommended. Okay, other stuff around here, and this one goes out to Chris W. He does content here for the website. He gunsmith, and I had on the project list for John 1911. I've got this 547 revolver. It's this 9mm revolver that doesn't use moon clips. It doesn't really work right, and I just haven't had the mental capacity to deal with it with all the other stuff going on. But it's on the list for this year, and Chris reached out. Apparently, Chris knows how to work on revolvers. He's been in Smith and Wessons, which makes an old guy like me feel good that a young guy like Chris is like these young guys even know what a revolver is. So he sent over some instructions. I haven't had a chance to file them away or tell Chris that I have them, but next week I'm planning on, and I'll probably film it or maybe just take pictures of it, because I don't know, me cracking open a revolver, I mean, it could get ugly fast. Stuff starts flying out of that thing, springs going everywhere. I'll curse like a blue streak from here to freaking France on that gun. But some people think that since it has a target hammer on it, somebody's been in this gun and messed with it. And it has a very, very nice double action pull, which I didn't think about being suspicious on. But uh, the revolver guys like Chris and another person have suggested maybe I just need to get in there and adjust a screw to make the the hammer spring or the main spring or whatever they call the spring. Maybe just put more pressure on that and maybe it would ignite and it would work. So it may have been fluffed for somebody's hand loads and light primers, and it won't pop the factory ammo, and it might just be a simple fix. And then at that point, all I have to do is decide, do I want to take the hammer out of it, which is a target type hammer, and convert it back to the original 547 hammer, or leave it the way it is? I don't know. I go back and forth on it. It's pretty handy to use that big hammer, so the big hammer spur. So that's kind of interesting news, and maybe we'll have some revolver content shortly here at John 1911 next week. Now I guess we got to get into some of the industry drama, and considering it's Wednesday at 4:18 p.m., you're probably thinking I'm going to bring up T-Rex, and I will bring up T-Rex, but not yet. Industry drama I wanted to talk about was Larry Vickers. Larry Vickers has shown up and did I don't know, 3 or 4 hour podcast with Shawn Ryan. If you're looking to find Shawn Ryan, he's got something called the Shawn Ryan Show. If you want to find him, his name is SHAWN RY. So Shawn Ryan, you'll find him. And so Vickers shows up and, talks about a lot of stuff from his career. And, Vickers is an interesting guy. And towards the end of the podcast, Vickers does address what a lot of you are aware, that he was arrested for NFA violations. He was arrested for sanctions violations. He didn't say it that way, but that's what he was arrested for. He called executive orders, but it looks like he is pled guilty, which we knew. I mean, we've seen the paperwork. He pled guilty, but he's on the hook for sentencing. And the argument is that maybe he has to possibly testify. And he intimated this a lot on the podcast. I'm not speaking for Larry. Listen to his podcast. But what's interesting is, like, a lot of us assumed, I assumed, I don't know how I got this in my head, that he was bringing in all these guns and got too pushy with the dealer samples. And for some reason, I even had it in my head that he brought in a FAMAS. And because I know he popped up with a full auto FAMAS, and then he had sold his semi auto to Ian McCollum. So we all saw this on the internet. And, I thought that maybe what he was doing was, he was bringing in, again, I'm embellishing just to tell a story in my mind. Like I'm thinking he's bringing in a FAMAS, he's bringing in RPKs, and he's doing all this stuff, and he's trying to get it all on law letters, like some local PD is going to, well, we possibly might, want to adopt a FAMAS rifle. So we want a T&E for demo law letter. So we, maybe our department will buy FAMAS rifles from France or something. Like I thought that's what he was doing. And looking at the paperwork and from what he said, he is claiming that he wasn't the reason that what launched the investigation, but they came kind of down on him because of some other people. Now, I could make some assumptions from that, but I don't want to do that. I don't want to get any threatening letters. But I did look at the paperwork and talking about Larry and the guns, at least in question, and maybe they pled some of it out. Maybe I haven't seen all the evidence, but and I was talking to Mongo about this. The guns that Larry brought in, or the things that Larry brought in for law letter demos, seem completely legit to me. Like it's the not Henstol, is it Hanel? One of the German companies made an AR. I remember we covered it. I can see some PD interested in like, oh yeah, we wouldn't mind seeing that gun. Maybe we can get a decent price or get the same price but more for our money. That, and then there's a bunch of B&T stuff, which is, all looks like to me all kind of legit cop gun, stuff. It's like, I mean, I'm not trying to be dismissive here, but I expected, Larry Vickers, I mean, I expected, FG-42s and belt feds and, Lord knows what. And it's like a German AR and a bunch of, the weird crap from B&T that, that's cops use in Europe. It's like none of this to me is like a big red flag. I'm like, well, fuck. I mean, that's not that big of a deal. And then the other thing is that I think that really got him, and he didn't. I think he said he might have referred to the person on pod as a government restricted person or special SDP, specially designated person. And there are these kinds of things. If you do business outside the country, which I have, and you have to be cognizant of this kind of thing. You have to be aware that you don't do things that are going to get you in trouble at home. And when the Russians, got cross with Obama on shit they were doing in Ukraine, Obama, again, it's really backdoor gun control for Obama. He put restrictions on Kalishnikov, importing AK stuff, importing stuff from Russia. And then, then he also did, and this was all executive order. None of this was done as a law. It's done, through the legislature. It's all EO stuff. And there, in certain individuals and certain people that United States, we have sanctioned against them. We can't do business with them. We have to divest. We can't, I mean, anything. You can't do anything with these people. You have to like cut business ties, do whatever. And, Larry is in with a lot of these people. He knows a lot of this stuff. And he was talking to somebody from Kalishnikov or maybe Kalishnikov USA, who they may be Russian and they're US, and but they're talking to people in Russia, and they were trying to set up a company in the US like all these other companies. H&K is basically moving to the US. Everyone knows SIG functionally moved to the US. Glock functionally really is a US company in my opinion. Kalishnikov was like, well, hell, everyone's like likes AKs in America. Why can't we make a bunch of money? Well, Obama, kicked him in the ass on that. And so Larry was talking to the Russians. They may not be Russian. I have to be careful. There may be people that Larry was talking to. They may not have been Russian citizens, even though they could have been, but they were either working for or associated with people that are on the sanctions list or organizations that are on the sanctions list. And so there's a term that you'll run into if you deal with international stuff. And Larry didn't use it, but it's called, what we would call it, the beneficial owner. So, for example, like let's say there was a gun company. Let's call it John 1911 AKs. Yeah, John 1911 AKs, and we are we're based in Russia. We're a Russian company, and eh, uh, uh, Ivan Markievich is the owner, and at John 1911 AKs, and there's sanctions on weapons and import and all this stuff from the executive order bringing the stuff in the U.S. just like the current stuff. If Kraken, if we were to set up a shell company in the U.S. and Kraken ran it, and it's, well, he's not Russian and he's not this, and we called it Kraken AKs. And you would think, you're like, well, are this gets around a lot of the, the people or the companies. Well, if it's doing it for the benefit of me or my sanctioned company, it's a violation of the executive order. The thing is, with executive orders, they can be interpreted fairly broad because it's not a law. It's not the letter of the law. It's open to interpretation. So Larry was talking to people about doing promos. He was talking to people about getting spare parts. And apparently, even advising these people is supporting them, violating the sanctions. They're like, hey, thanks for helping us. Larry, we got your parts. Whenever the politics change, we'll get them right over to you. That's a violation of sanctions. And I know something about this because as a Blaser person, and the average listener won't remember this or care, but I ran into the exact same problem that Larry Vickers did because I was talking to dudes in Russia because they were doing stuff with Blaser rifles that nobody else around the country, around the world, was doing. And it was weird. They had access to machining and stuff, and I was going to have some stuff brought in. And once Obama put the sanctions on, it was like, we're done. We're out of it. Can't touch this. And here's what happened. So these people in Russia, they set up I would call it a cutout. That would be how you'd call it in a charging document. um, they set up a company in an EU country, and so they were getting stuff. I don't know if it was coming through like Estonia, Latvia. I don't, and then, they were able to sell into the EU, then get into the US. And I was like, dude, like, I'm not touching this. I'm not bringing this shit in. We're not dealing with it because this will come back to haunt us because it leaves this big paperwork trail. And even though you bring it in, you get away with it, you don't get away with it. And sure as shit, here we are. That's what they really kind of got Larry on. It looks like that's the real big one. So, um, this is my opinion. The law letter stuff, as far as I've seen, is just kind of lazy. They should have had the demos. Like, it's like, do you want this? Nah, I don't want it. You keep it. They're saying this in text messages. Have the demo. If you're going to do this, I know they're cracking down on it. Don't be stupid. If you're friends with law enforcement, have them show up, get a video camera out. Here's the B&T whatever gun, do whatever, you guys, whatever. Then have them officially, have a dog and pony show. you know, serve ribs, whatever you want to do, and then officially have them write a letter, be like, nah, dude, we're not going to give you $150,000 for these. So at least make it official. They got Larry and some of these dudes got a little lazy and they're like, yeah, don't worry about it. We don't want it. You know, we're not going to do it. You want it, you keep it. No, I don't want it on my license. I don't want this. You go ahead. And that they got all jammed up on it. So, well, I'm saying that to say this. Um, I thought it'd be worse. It's bad, but I thought it'd be worse. Larry did talk about basically deciding to plead guilty because it would save money, because he would probably still lose, and he would lose just from the evidence I saw in the charging documents. I agree, and so the problem is now because they were talking. He's been on the hook now for a couple years, and he was talking about either getting a package together with the attorney general to get his gun rights back because he's under disability. I don't know where his gun collection is or what's going on there, um, and or getting a pardon. Well, here's the thing: he is if they're dragging their feet on these other cases, and these cases are now because there's rumors now because Larry's talking 2024, 25. There's rumors now some of these people or whatever they're dealing with, it's 2026, 2027. I mean, if Larry has to testify against some of these people, well, I mean, we're looking at possibly, getting out of the Trump administration. So I don't know how likely that is. Well, I mean, I don't know how likely that is. Nor and look, if it was George H.W. Bush and the clock was ticking, it's waiting for George H.W. Bush to give Larry a pardon. I think there's that appearance of impropriety and timing that George H.W. Bush wouldn't give Larry a full pardon before he testifies. Donald Trump, I don't know. Donald Trump do what the fuck he wants. I mean, nobody knows. Nobody's really sure. But I think, and I'm gonna make this personal point about Larry. I know I'm kind of rambling, but I just kind of want to get it all out there. Um, Larry's guilty. He did it. His people he's associated with, they were abusing the law letter, demo letter system. And Larry, people are cringe when I say this. I've come to realize that Larry Vickers and what's happened to him is become my OJ Simpson. And what do I mean by that? So I remember when OJ was charged with murder of Nicole and Ron Coleman and Nicole Brown Simpson, and he was found not guilty. And he was obviously guilty, but the reality is the bulk of Black America, um, they wanted him, they wanted OJ to get off, even though he was guilty, because it was payback or it was justification for how they feel about a lot of other issues, right? And so I'm in a position now with Larry Vickers. I'm now sympathetic to that argument. Larry's guilty, but he's a gun nerd. Okay. He's an American hero. I can't imagine there's too many people that have gone higher up in government service, as far as like vetted background check, whatever people. And at the end of the day, Larry's guilty of being a gun dork and machine gun collector. And it's like machine guns are not illegal. They still are around. They're still legal. There's all these loopholes and rules and all this nonsense and double standards. Like the stuff is so out of control with the machine guns that museums cannot even take machine guns into their collections for historical purposes because the way the way the laws are written. And I'm at this point, I'm prepared to make Larry Vickers the poster child of how out of fucking control this is, how out of control these laws are. The NFA, people aren't going to want to hear this. I'm not speaking as a Second Amendment person. I'm speaking as, under the Constitution and how things are interpreted today. The NFA in 1934 is, in and of itself, not unconstitutional as it is interpreted under the idea of reasonable gun control. Okay, it's not. But what fucks the what makes all that a disaster is the Hughes Amendment in 86, shutting it all down so you can't add any more things to the registry. That's unconstitutional. That nullifies the NFA. The importation bans of bringing stuff in 1968 basically nullifies making the NFA constitutional. And the delays that people had waiting for the paperwork for, on this NFA stuff, NFA, National Firearms Act, machine gun suppressors, all this stuff, because I had to wait 16 months for some of the stuff I had. That's unconstitutional. Like, you could blow all this stuff up legally, constitutionally, with any of these three arguments. And if we have to make Larry Vickers basically if we have to take Larry Vickers nailed to the NFA cross to finally get some real change on this, not just stupid fucking gun mufflers off the NFA, thank you, sir. May I have another? It's just ridiculous. Like, I guess now a gun muffler is going to be treated like a gun, but, as opposed to and treated like, I don't know, like a missile. But, all this other stuff is just out of control, ridiculous, and still unconstitutional. And dudes like Larry Vickers. And there is a downstream effect of all this that's pretty bad. And people don't want to, they never even say this, but it's true. And it's obvious to the gun community in the US if somebody would point it out to them. That's why I'm here now. So here it is. Without people like Larry Vickers, or insert your favorite or most respected or most well-known or accomplished gun users, gun designers, gun researchers, gun vetters, gun designers, gun sellers. Without these people, you end up with a weapons market that ends up becoming insular, less effective, and slowly degraded until you get to a point where you don't even have viable and workable firearms for even the defense of your country or the defense of your citizens. Now, if you think I'm being a little hyperbolic, look at England. All these guns used to be made in England, and these hippies over there, they basically ran all these gun companies out of business. They closed all this stuff up. They destroyed the gun markets over there. So, because civilians basically can't own anything that's worth owning. And then it got to be so bad they don't have the expertise or the experience or even the mechanical skill to make stuff that works. And that's why you had with the SA-85 or whatever that bullpup disaster was that the Brits tried to field. That's a direct result of draconian gun control. I mean, they basically had to get to the point where they had to get the Germans to come in to make the guns work because, their they couldn't make their own gun for their own military. And this was a long time ago, and then it's to the point now that I'm convinced a lot of these countries in Western Europe are buying the HK416. Thank you, Larry Vickers. Thank you, H&K, because Larry Vickers shepherded a lot of that. I'm not saying he designed it, but he definitely worked with H&K, and he talks about his podcast. Everyone kind of knows this, but a lot of these countries are buying, that are not Germany, are buying these HK416 type guns because they don't have a goddamn choice. They don't have a domestic firearms production that they can even pull off, or that would even be viable. It's part of the reason why you see countries they push for the idea of like, we want to have domestic made fighter aircraft because it's a skill and you have to develop it, you have to maintain it, you have to nurture it, you got to keep it going, you got to, and we kind of do that in the US because we want to keep our companies going in the expertise. And even in some of the F-35 programs, a lot of the buyers of the F-35 around the world were like, hey, we want to be able to assemble this for these planes for us in our country, or we want to make certain components so they can have some expertise. If you don't make stuff, and it's not just the idea of like how it is in America versus China and how we don't make anything in America anymore, all the shit's made overseas. It's true with guns. There's a reason why America has the healthiest gun culture and gun manufacturing base in the world, firearms manufacturing. And, you can even take it beyond stuff you can buy, but it all still all kind of falls under the NFA, missiles and tanks and rockets and all that stuff and drones, armored drones, because, there's people to buy it and there's an ecosystem to incentivize development. If you ban all this shit and you just lock it all down and you keep trying to put your nerds in jail, Larry Vickers, you lose that national ability, that national skill set, that institutional wisdom. And it's fucking terrible, is what it is. And, you know, I don't know what Vickers has to do to kind of get things to move forward, but I hope that somebody who is in the Trump administration can fast track some of this for Larry. Because if you're waiting on the wheels of justice, I think the clock's going to run out on him. This is the way things work in federal court. Not unfamiliar with federal court. I'm telling you, I know what I'm talking about. I know which road leads to the federal courthouse. I don't think Larry's going to get his rights back anytime soon unless something politically unusual happens, like a big name person that works in a Trump administration all of a sudden gets on Twitter X and just starts having a meltdown about Larry Vickers one night, and people that have power to make these kinds of decisions, it's brought to their attention. And unfortunately, unless I mean, I hate to say this. I mean, I'm not being critical. I mean, Donald Trump is not a gun guy. I get it. He's a New York building developer who wears fancy Italian shoes and has a supermodel wife, okay? He and I are not the same person. But the only way I see Larry Vickers getting his stuff back anytime soon or at all is if basically the gun community figures out a way to shame the shit out of somebody in the Trump administration, to embarrass the fuck out of them, to fix this fucking problem. Because Larry Vickers is my OJ. And fuck it. We got to change the law. Shoo. and you and you thought I was going to talk about T-Rex. I'm not even on to that one yet. I don't even know where to go with there's been so much drama in the past like 10 days in the gun world that it's just like, Larry Vickers finally gets to say something publicly. He hasn't said anything. We've been waiting for years. What's going on with Larry? We know Larry's in trouble. How bad is he? He's suffering from cancer. They raided his house. What happened? What's going on with him? It looks bad. We're seeing the paperwork. Well, now let's get on the SIG. So, Christ. So I don't know. It's like, I become unlike Larry Vickers, or I become personally invested in and passionate about the SIG P320, M17, M18. I take a more distanced, nuanced view as a business owner and a business person. And I don't fault exactly the steps that various people make, because in business, people, they get in situations, you have to do what you can. You're trying to win. It's like a football game. It's fine. I mean, I'm not unsympathetic, but it's obvious to me now a couple of things. So there's a guy who I'm sure most of you know. His name is excuse me. His name is the Sig Armorer. I think I have the right guy, and if I don't, I apologize. So so a rumor came out. There was a guy, I believe it was Sig Armorer on YouTube. I think Sig Armorer would be safe to assume that Sig Armorer is a guy who probably makes money working on SIGs, selling SIGs, modifying SIGs. Like maybe he's like a little boutique gunsmith. And he apparently at some point had come out and said he has found the problem for the uncommanded discharges on the SIG P320. And he's gone so far, that's what he had said, that he is filed or filing a patent. I would assume it would be a what was I literally just had some stuff come in from the patent people. What do they call that? It's not a temporary patent, but what it's like a conditional patent until they can fully research it. It's a way to get your stuff kind of documented. They're not giving it to you exactly, but it's like, oh, this looks like it's okay. I think it's provisional patent. And on this solution, and he wouldn't say what it was, or at least he wasn't telling people like me, what the solution was. And he's got it. Like, I've got it. I figured it out. Whatever it is, he's got it. And a week or two later, maybe over 2 weeks, Sig Armorer comes out, and it now comes to my attention that he was invited by Sig to go to Sig and tour the factory, which was his first mistake. And then he came home and he is backed off, supposedly, of the he's backed off of claiming what the solution is and saying that there isn't a problem, and he's not doing the fix, I believe, or the pat. I don't. Maybe he's pulled the pat. I don't. He didn't specify any of that, and it wasn't clear to me. And it seems pretty obvious to me. And when I first heard that he was going to file what I would assume would be a provisional patent on something that is kind of falling under the intellectual property of SIG. Oh, I knew he was going to get a fucking call from a lawyer. And his worst mistake was going up there, because you could even make an argument. I could easily find a lawyer that could make an argument. Let me put it. Let me give a hypothetical example to prove a point. And this doesn't work technically, but just to prove a point. Like, let's say I were to find a way through a patent filing to say, I know where Hillary Clinton was on the night of Benghazi and what she did and didn't do, and it's in my provisional patent filing. You think I wouldn't get a call from the Clinton Global Initiative or the Secretary of State's office or from Uma Abedin or somebody? Oh yeah, I'd have gotten a fucking call. And Sig, I mean, I don't know what Sig did to the Sig Armorer guy. I don't know what kind of hostage video he had to release, but it's just like it's disappeared, I believe. Last I've heard, maybe the product's back on or the solution's back on. But it's like, man, this looks bad. And again, I'm not even going to say that the SIG P320 has a problem. Their argument is, which I'll touch on in a minute, is like they're saying it's keys, they're saying it's holsters, they're saying it's lights on guns in holsters. They're saying it's stuff getting into holsters. Maybe it's flexing holsters. I think there's some flexing guns in holsters. I think there's something to that, but not the way SIG may want to try to say that. it Sig. I mean, it's entirely. I have to admit in this soliloquy here that it's entirely possible that it's going to come out in the future that Sig was right the entire time, and it's not their fault. You have to. It's. I mean, it's. I'm not going to say it's likely, but it's mathematically it's not zero. Like there is a chance. So you have to acknowledge that. So there's that situation with the Sig Armorer. I have seen the thing with. I haven't really watched it, but I guess somebody has gone out there who, because these guns are modular, and I think that's the problem. These guns are modular, and you got the fire control unit, take them all apart. You can swap the grip modules, we'd call a frame, a grip module, and the fire control unit, and all the different things. And somebody, I guess, was taking 40 caliber parts and 9 millimeter parts and 10 millimeter parts and whatever other caliber they're going on, and swapping them and moving them all around, and with the towel, and somehow maybe getting strikers to drop without pulling the trigger. And that was pretty interesting. And apparently when that happened, that finally got another independent Sig focused gunsmith named Bruce Gray to finally come out and be like, there's a problem with these guns. And, he's the guy who's famous for saying there isn't a problem with these guns. So, I don't know what the problem is. My theory is that it's the whole concept of the fire control unit. I think it's a pretty thin looking setup because that fire control unit fits in a grip module, and I think you could twist the whole system, and maybe you can make an argument that it won't twist in the grip module. I don't know. I don't know the positions. Again, I'm not dumb enough to go to Sig to have the conversation. Fun fact, as an aside, in my professional life, attorneys, we've been advised repeatedly never to sign NDAs, and in my personal attorney, she is advised never to sign an NDA. I've had an issue with something with this in the past. Fun fact, now, God rest his soul, my old friend Ed Brown. I was talking to Ed one time, and somebody had approached Ed, and they were like, "Hey, I want you to look at something. I want to get your opinion on something I've invented, whatever, whatever, whatever. And I want you to sign an NDA." And Ed basically was like, "Fuck you and the horse you rode in on. I'm not signing shit." Says there's no new ideas, and Ed goes, you didn't come up with any ideas, and you're not going to have me sign something, and then turn around and try to sue me and get money out of me because you think something similar, and it's just no way of doing it. And here's the thing: when Ed had told me that conversation, that was almost 20 years ago. When Ed had told me that, if I had listened to him then, it would have saved me almost six figures. So yeah, I get it. So yeah, your best bet. Don't I don't know where things are with Sig. I don't know where things are with Bruce Gray. I don't know where things are with the Sig Armorer. I don't know where things are with swapping parts. I don't know where things are with Sig. Now Sig is approached, I guess, the New Hampshire state legislature, asking them to pass a state law that grants them some kind of liability immunity. I don't know how that's supposed to work if you can get it in federal court. I don't know if that would even pass a challenge, but it's another one of these things where it's obviously the lawyers are running the show at Sig, not actual business people. But if Sig is innocent and it's just out of control, maybe you have to have the lawyers running the company at this point. I still think it's the problems at the top. And I'll give an example as to why in a minute, using T-Rex as an example. But the final thing I want to say about SIG is where we are with SIG and where SIG seems to be going with the CP320. And again, as of Wednesday, June 4th, 2025 at 4:56 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, because it seems to change all the time, SIG seems to be drifting towards the idea that this isn't their problem, that this is a holster problem. And, you know, from all the gun drama and the gun community, everybody wants to focus on Sig and the Sig Armorer and Bruce Gray and Ben Stager. I'm going to say his name right now. And all whatever it is. And that's fine. I promise you, I promise you, I don't know this, but I can surmise it, that there are people that work at Safariland and other companies that make law enforcement retention holsters for SIGs that are like scrambling to get ahead of this and are privately like, number one, we got to find out if our holsters are causing the problem. Number two, if we're not causing the problem, we have to be able to document and prove it, because that's number two. And then number three, because the lawsuits are coming for us. People are coming with pitchforks and money and injured, and they're going to stop going after SIG, and SIG's going to start passing the buck onto holster manufacturers. And, the gun forum argument would be, I don't know, that's weird. Every other gun that's, for example, Safariland makes a holster for doesn't go off when it's got a light on it, but the SIG, apparently it goes off when it's got the light on it. That would be the argument that somebody would make, like maybe the common denominator isn't the holster, it's the gun, but neither here nor there. The bottom line is, if you're listening to me right now and you make holsters and you're a small fry guy and you're making holsters for SIG P320s or M17s, M18s, SIG anything at this point, my professional opinion, you on the record right now, is to stop making holsters for SIG P320s. Pull them off your website. Stop making them. As a matter of fact, if I was Safariland, I wouldn't announce it, but all of a sudden, those 320s holsters, retention holsters, level 2, level 3, light bearing, all this kind of stuff, out of stock. Out of stock, out of stock, out of stock. Fuck you, SIG. If I was a holster maker and SIG's going to put the zap on my forehead for this problem, I wouldn't make holsters for these guns. You're insane to make holsters for these guns at this point, especially if you don't have a shit ton of money that you can fight this kind of stuff in court. Because I promise you, if something happens that even remotely, slightly has like an air of just like ambivalence to it regarding a holster, just because it's some crazy situation where it's like, man, that was kind of weird. SIG is going to crucify you and blame this electric charged particle of this storm is going to hit you like the biggest lightning bolt and is going to melt your whole life. If you're selling anything with a SIG P320 format gun in it, I advise you to stop. And I wonder if some of these companies, you know what? When I get off this podcast right now, I'm going to go to the Blackhawk website. I'm going to go to the Safariland website, and I'm going to see, can you buy a holster from them with a SIG P320? If they're smart, I would just be like, oh, supply chain, why is the supply chain on the other one still in stock? Oh, it's just kind of fun. We need a special fastener for that because of the shape. Shoe baby. We're still going. So this one came out of the blue for me. I don't know anything more than any of you. As a matter of fact, I guarantee every one of you knows more than I know. And I am referring to, of course, T-Rex Arms, Lucas Botkin. What's the one brother's name? There's Lucas. It's a bunch of them, a bunch of families. So I probably was 2 days. I think every one of you had found out 2, 3, 4, 5 days that Lucas Botkin from T-Rex Arms has left his company. And I guess he's also resigned from the board. And he left his position, C-suite position. I think it was CEO. Left the C-suite. Also from the board of directors. I do know about how companies work. And there is a clause in their contract that what it is they they're going to buy him out, and because it's going to be a right of first refusal as well if he tries to sell his ownership. But he basically said, "I'm leaving the company, and your guys are going to have to buy me out." And that's really interesting, considering that he started the company in a garage with a little bit of money. Again, most people listening to this podcast an hour in, I don't need to rehash the origin story of Lucas Botkin. He's an interesting guy. Um, I don't know what the hell's going on. I think it's interesting to me to watch the crowds and the comments and the know nothings and the jersey waivers and the people with what's the phrase I heard recently? I thought was a great way to put it. The high opinion, low investment people. And so a couple things. Um, well, I guess I'm gonna say this. Yeah, I don't know what the problem is. I don't know about these photographs or text messages that were sent. I don't know what the growing separation is between the members of the thing. As a matter of fact, I'm certain when we publish this, a bunch of you will inform me in the comments section. Please do, actually. And you guys do a good job of that, because as an aside, I had asked publicly, I was 2 podcasts ago, why do all these people seem to hate GBRS? And one of you finally took the time, sent me a long email, and I'm like, oh, okay. Oh, okay, I see. All right. Yeah, and not completely unexpected. Just like with the T-Rex situation, there's some stuff here that's not completely unexpected. Again, I'm a business person. I'm a gentleman of a certain age. I've been around the sun a few times. I've seen a lot of things, and I've experienced a lot of things. So we'll kind of go through it in a little bit. Um, people are people are harping on the picture thing. I guess the one brother who is part of the company, I don't know if he's an owner or not, but he's part of the company. He did the video announcing that he did the video from T-Rex Arms Corporate announcing that Lucas had left the company. And he also made a reference to somebody had sent inappropriate images to somebody close to Lucas Botkin, somebody from the company. And there's a couple interesting points there. Like, number one, why would he say that? This is an argument. This is a lesson for SIG, because whatever it is, bad or really bad, it's going to come out. So get ahead of it. I've seen people make reference to that because they're keying in on it because it's salacious and interesting, and you start thinking about what's the possibilities. But again, from a corporate messaging standpoint or crisis, crisis management or reputational management standpoint, SIG, this is an example of T-Rex Arms doing something right. Whatever this fucking retarded problem is with this communication, it's going to come out. If you get ahead of it, start bracing people for it, it takes a lot of sting off of it, as opposed to just these rolling train wrecks of problems that keep coming, and then like keep making excuses and trying to get immunity for it in the state house. So until the Botkins try to get immunity in the Texas State House for something, I'm not gonna shit on them. But I thought that was interesting, and I thought that was probably a good move, and it's probably a clue of it's gonna not be nice. And there could be a lot of turmoil in there. A couple things to also consider. People are talking about, I saw some comments, people are asking Lucas, did you sign a non-compete? And he goes, no, I didn't sign a non-compete. And they're like, well, you're going to start I'm going to buy whatever from you, you're going to make in holsters and all that. I have no information. I have no communication. I have no whatever. Okay, so I could be as wrong as a broken clock and be right once a day or twice a day. I think the chances that Lucas Botkin's going to be making holsters is about zero. For a couple reasons. One, I'm not so certain Lucas, from what I know of just observed casually. Again, I'm not a big follower of Lucas. I like them. I like their company. I like their messaging. I certainly love their app, their promotions and their content. Like they're fabulous. But I can't, I can't sit and consume a bunch of other people's shit all the time. But, from what I can tell, he's grown to do other things. I don't know what that means, what he wants to do, and we don't know what the arguments are inside the company, but I doubt Lucas wants to. I would be surprised if Lucas wants to you know, get a heat gun and a heat press and a vacuum thing and start making holsters in his garage. And, for a couple reasons. And this is where I'm going to get into people being stupid. So again, you get these dumbasses in the comments. And this is where, again, because I have some age and some experience in crisis. There's people that are going to like, T-Rex is done. I'll never buy one ever again. I'll do this. And that may be true because, you know, people love the dog pile and virtue signal and pretend that they're better than everybody else, or they like to tear people down. They love tearing people down. But it's like, okay, let's go back to something here. If you're fans of Lucas Bodkin, all right, and it's a family business, it's essentially what it's turned into. Apparently has 100 employees, which is not small. I'll get to that in a minute. But family members are principals in this business. So you're advocating for hurting the Botkin family, but you like Botkin. Well, like you've decided that the Botkin family, they're an enemy of Lucas, and you have reason to think that. Why? Because somebody said maybe something about somebody's wife in a comment section that has no affiliation or knowledge of any of this. Like, what are you doing, dude? And here's another problem. Now, I know how business works, okay? There's the right of first refusal. For example, if, I just popped in my head. What would keep me from contacting Lucas right now? I could do this. I literally could do this, and I could actually buy it and be like, yo, Lucas, sell me I want to buy your share of the company. There would have to be I can look at the market and I can look at the market as a classification of the type of business it is. And I can look at the market and I can look at their book and I can come up with a multiple and I can divide it by, and I can figure out what his share should be, his value should be. Okay. And I could buy it. It's probably worth more than what I think it is, which would probably surprise me. But even then, I could still buy it. I could buy Lucas out. However, why would the Botkin brothers do? Why would they be happy with that? They would be stupid. There has to be in a contract. It's called the right of first refusal. If Marky from John 1911 shows up, and let's just say I'm going to make an easy round number. Let's just say $1 million. I don't know if it's worth that, but whatever. It's an easy number to work with. Let's say I approach Lucas and I'm like, I'm going to buy your company. And it's $1 million, I'm going to buy it. And he tries to sell it to me. If the contractors have right of first refusal, they get first dibs to buy his ownership, the company, and the members of the company. And I use the word members specifically. That has a legal definition to it. And, so not anybody can just buy this company if there's contracts written correctly. And it would be so normal to do that, like you'd expect it. The other thing is too, How are they going to value? Because I hinted around this a little bit. How are they going to value or come up for a valuation of what his shares are worth? And people on the internet are stupid. People in the comment section are stupid on YouTube. Oh, they're morons. Um, and they talk about people, like, I'm not trying to say, but there's people that live that have never bought anything of value in their lives, never run anything of value in their lives, are pretending like they know how things are going to work with this company. So, for example, let's say I'll use the $1 million example again. So, again, I doubt even if it's worth I could buy it, but whatever. Let's just say, so there's 4 owners. Lucas got a quarter share. $4 million company. Lucas is a $1 million percentage. Well, if I come in to offer to buy it at 5 million, the right of first refusal, depending on how the contract's written, right of first refusal, if it's not written as, a preset determined calculation in the contract, like they can buy for 10 cents on the dollar, or they can do this, or there's a structure in the contract on how they could buy Lucas out to meet my 5 million, my multi-million-dollar valuation on his, if I want to overpay for it, or they can buy it at a predetermined amount. But here's the thing, there's all these kids, they're talking about fuck T-Rex, and I'll never do this, I'll never do that. It's like, whatever, you don't know what you're talking about. And it's like, you love Lucas, you'll follow him everywhere. What if there's an earnout here? What if T-Rex Arms and the owners don't have the money to buy Lucas out? So they're going to have to finance it, or they can do in-house financing and be like, we'll pay you $65,000 a year every year for the next 10 years. And, that'll get you out to where you need to be. Or maybe Lucas is like, fuck you, I need my money now. They're going to have to go and finance it. They're going to have to get financing in a bank. Well, how are they going to pay for the financing if you guys aren't buying the goddamn holsters from the company? Guys don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what I'm talking about as far as what's going on in that company, but I certainly know what's going on. I can guess what's going on as far as how their book works. Okay. So everyone relax. We'll see what's going on. And here's another thing that I think is probably worth mentioning. As a general rule in business, it is understood, it is observed. It's not understood because people wouldn't do it. It's observed by people with experience that businesses that involve family tend to have difficulties. And what ends up happening is when you have multi-generational or siblings, and traditionally what will be is you'll get a father, not being sexist, you'll get a founder, starts a business. He's the widget man. He's the widget man of Kansas. And he dies and he leaves his company to his 2 sons. And, the one son is like worked in the business the whole time, and the other son is off surfing and, doing whatever in Bora Bora, right? So there causes conflict and drama and money. There is an entire segment of the business world. There are law firms, there are accountants, there are mediators, there are contracts, there are practices that exist solely to navigate family drama in businesses. Because sometimes you get in a situation where it's not unlike a family farm. Father dies, the farm's left. You either give it all to one son or you try to split it up, but the farm can't survive splitting it up. One son doesn't want to work the farm, the other son does. The other son wants the money out, but the other son needs to keep the farm going so they can survive, and so you have to negotiate all this stuff. And there are people. I knew a person that specialized. This person was a high dollar consultant that would be brought in when stuff got really bad to navigate and manage family-owned business drama, because that's how common this is. This isn't this isn't something that is unique to the gun community. It isn't something that's unique to the Botkin family, and it isn't something that exists because of Lucas Botkin or not because of Lucas Botkin or whatever. Now, here's the other thing. So I'm going to make a point here. So, because again, you get these know nothings, and they're like, because again, they love Luke, because they're just look. This is why I don't watch This is why I don't watch ESPN and football and all that kind of stuff. It's because people get hyperbolic, and they just because you're a fan of the football team doesn't mean you know how to be a quarterback or you know how to run a team. And if you recognize that, you know, T-Rex Arms is not Lucas, and that's probably one of the problems. And you have to recognize this, okay? They talk about it all the time. You know, they moved to their new facility. They've expanded. They moved to their new facility. They've expanded. Lucas talks about, I even saw some of this. I don't even watch really much of his content. He talks about, I don't really shoot that much anymore. I'm a CEO. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. We're doing this. We're doing that. There's a big company there. And when you have a big company, there's money. And when, when you have, you have relationships with the bank. You have to make payroll. You have to finance the payroll, every 2 weeks and every 30 days. It means you have to have, the company has to have like an identity and credit and a Dun and Bradstreet number, and you have to have lines of credit, and then you've got to have compliance, and you have covenants with your financial institutions, and then maybe they're buying stuff from people, or they're buying their Kydex or whatever, they're not Kydex or whatever they're doing, and they're buying stuff every month, and it's like vendors, and is it cash and carry? Is it, well, they send the stuff, and then you pay us in 30, you send you a bill, and that 30, like there's all this kind of stuff going on. And you got accountants, and you got to deal with you've got to deal with at some point you got 100 people, you got HR, and you have to make a decision. I've been through all this. Are you going to handle HR in-house, or are you going to have an HR outside group come in and run your HR? And if you're going to have this many employees, you're going to have a handbook, and you're going to have policies, and you're going to have all this kind of stuff happen. What happens if you get an employee that you need to fire because they're a fuckface? Or you got two employees that start fucking each other. It's like, well, that's not really a problem. Is it a problem? I don't know. Or do their husbands and wives also work at the company? What if the two employees that are fucking each other have a big screaming match in the middle of the company? Like I've seen all of this stuff. Like and so I don't know what's going on at T-Rex, but you don't know either. And I would not be surprised if some of this, like, well, I have to stand by my principles, and I have to do this, and I have to do that. That's good. That's fine. But unfortunately, you're not, a one-man band anymore. You're going to you have to give, which you have HR practices and HR standards. You got to do things like, you got to do write-ups, and you got to have notices, and you got to have communication, and you got to do all this stuff because you're going to get sued. And I will tell, so this company's gone and sold. It tell two stories here. Tell two stories. If I tell this, I got to be careful. Okay, I got two stories. This is from my side of the fourth wall, not your side or Lucas's side. I know of a situation where a company, successful, hint, hint, so successful that it not only is promoting from within, it's needing to bring outsiders in because the company needs big boy help and big boy stuff. And so, the concept in these companies, I used a phrase called the C-suite, chief executive officer, chief financial officer. You'll have, you know, chief compliance officer. You know, however you want to put these people, and they function on a board. On a board of directors, or they're the top people that run things. Okay, and so I am aware of a company that hired an outside person uh, during a holiday season. And so it was office party season, and outsider C-suite level person, yeah, was like brand new at this company, like brand spanking new. High dollar guy person. It may not have been a guy. High dollar person. It's a guy because the way the story's going to go. High dollar person, and you know has to go to this big function. And in any company, you're going to have a spectrum of people. Okay, you're going to have people like me. Um, you know, I don't know, sweetest guy in the world. Not a raging lunatic, right? Yeah, that's not. But there's people like me, and then there'll be people that are not like me. Okay, you'll have people that are liberal. You'll have people that are shy. You'll have people that are fat. You'll have people that are attractive. You'll have people that are uh, ambitious, and you have people that are so happy with and content with their lives, and just all kinds of people. And this person who's new to the company goes to this party at this company because he has to go because he's a new employee. And it's, hey, meet everybody, whatever, been there like a week, going to start the new year because it's, the new financial year, January 1, blah, blah, blah. It's Christmas, holiday season. I didn't say Christmas. That's a rumor. Christmas is a rumor. New person is standing by the punch bowl, and he's looking around the room, and he sees a very, very, very attractive woman at the party. And he's doesn't know anybody, but he's going to be a high level guy. And he does something very, 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 very stupid. He turns to the person next to him, and in reference to the very attractive girl he sees at this party, this corporate event. I'll put this in T-Rex, ambivalent, vague terms. He says something very inappropriate to the person next to him in reference to how attractive and what he would do with somebody that attractive, that he's looking at. Unfortunately for this person, he is speaking to the attractive girl's husband, who also works at the company. And unfortunately, not only did he say this to the husband, more than one other person heard this. So you can't even have a gentleman's agreement, a wink and a nod, handshake, whatever. It's out. And it was very inappropriate. It's like one of these things where you're like, what do, like, what are you, fucking 20? And this person, rumor has it, I might be aware of, I might not be, had to be terminated, had to leave the company. And then on top of it, because he's a professional, he had to help the company continue to function for a couple weeks in his new C-suite position while the company finds a replacement for him, because he's being terminated from the job he just started. And he has to go home to his wife and explain why. Companies can be complicated. And you can imagine in the example I just gave you that HR has their finger up everybody's ass on this. Because if anybody does or says the wrong thing, the lawsuits are going to fly. You have to do things certain ways. You have to do things, um, you know, um, in accordance to certain standards and practices. It's easy to get into the comment section on a YouTube channel and be like, fuck you, that's the way it's going to be. And it's not, because you're a punk idiot and you don't know shit about shit. So I don't know what's going on T-Rex Arms. I imagine there's probably a lot more going on than what people think. Maybe as the company grows and becomes more, develops more of a business culture and develops more of a, they're trying to do, um, they're basically lobbying, they're doing advocacy work. I know they're religious. Maybe they're not happy with a lot of the aggressiveness and the trolling that their CEO does. We don't know what the problems are. We don't really know if the problem is dirty pictures to somebody. We don't know if it's a diddling problem. We don't know if it's inappropriate comments at the Christmas party. We don't know what we don't know. All we know is there's Lucas Botkin has resigned his position as CEO of T-Rex Arms and has resigned from the board of T-Rex Arms and somebody is executing a buyout of his shares of the company. And I don't know if that's an agreement or if that's being forced by one party or another party or what the situation is. But before you guys line up out there and you start saying certain things, how things are going to happen or what you think is going to happen or what needs to happen or where your money's going to go or how you're going to support people, be very careful, because you may be hurting the very dude that you think you're supporting. Okay. All right. We got to get out of this one. So, okay. Two things that we're going to get out. We're not going to do a police blotter for this one because it's just, trying to have some fun. John 911 podcast, solo episode. We'll get the boys back on the next one. Two things. Jamie Dimon, who is the CEO of Chase Bank. I know who Jamie Dimon is because, it's the largest bank in the country and he likes to be out there and he definitely likes the sound of his own voice and his face in media, not unlike Lucas Botkin. And because I think Jamie's thinking about the future and he likes to be out there. So Chase, he's the of Chase Bank, and Chase Bank has a policy of not doing business with people that sell guns or manufacture guns and do whatever. The CEO of that company, because he's trying to shit talk the economy, maybe he's right, I don't know, but he came out and he said he recommends people buy guns and ammo. And I just thought the irony of that was just so choice, Jamie. Appreciate you, as a private client customer. Appreciate you. And why don't you get your shit in order and change your rules over there, Chase, so you quit fucking with the gun companies or people in the sector, in the space. Because, I know for a fact y'all won't process credit cards for any of those businesses, but you just came out and advocated for that. I don't know. I feel like that'd be a conversation worth having at the board one day. Second thing is, irony of ironies, the next day it's sent to me, Citibank has lifted its debanking restrictions on firearms makers and sellers. So what a difference an election makes. So maybe we can also, people in my side of the in my genre of business, at least on the John 1911 side, can get a little bit more respect from the people on Wall Street. So and on fintech, That's the buzzword, fintech, financial technology. So, well, this wraps up episode 373 of the John 1911 podcast. If you want to see the stories or pictures, links, stuff like this, please go to the website at john1911.com. That's JOHN1911.com. Remember, it's all about shooting guns and having fun, everybody. Have a good day.